the 17th of April 2025. Over Yemen's night sky, a phantom signal appears. Operators assume it's a drone, a routine intercept. They arm Sayyad missiles and lock onto the target. But this wasn't a drone. It was the B-2 Spirit, a flying wing radar cross-section smaller than a bird. You don't see a B-2 unless it wants to be seen. The Sayyads roar into the night sky, but the B-2 was gone before they reached altitude. Not shot down, not hit, simply gone. While they scrambled, the Spirit kept moving, already transmitting live reconnaissance data. What it shared would ignite a firestorm. This wasn't routine, it was the trigger moment. Houthis had fired at the wrong aircraft, and the response wouldn't just be precise, it would be personal. The moment Sayyad missiles launched, they were already behind. They thought it was a drone, but the Spirit was watching back. Radar cross-section, smaller than a bird. It wasn't just avoiding detection, it was built to be forgotten. From a hillside near Al-Hudaydah, missiles had screamed skyward. The B-2 recorded everything: vectors, signatures, trajectories. Within seconds, Diego Garcia had the coordinates. What they had fired on wasn't just recon, it was armed. Command didn't hesitate, this was direct aggression. The Spirit banked south. Small correction, massive consequence. The rebels still searched for a kill. They had none. The Spirit locked GPS. The strike was inevitable. The first pair of JDAMs fell without a sound. Gravity guidance and vengeance guided them home. Impact within 1 meter of perfection. An equipment hub erased in a single strike. Secondary blasts lit the hillside like daylight. But the Spirit wasn't done. Next was the bunker. 2 5,000-pound penetrators and their purpose: annihilation. The hillside cracked open in fire and steel. From launch to destruction, less than 15 minutes. And the Spirit already climbing westward, untouchable. This wasn't a show of force, it was deep strike doctrine. The Spirit doesn't warn, it disappears then delivers. Every strike sharpened by real-time data. Mobile launch units, hidden convoys exposed instantly. Normally bombers return, but not tonight. This night, the Spirit was judge and executioner. Houthis expected hours, they got seconds. 15 minutes from confident launch to absolute destruction. The B-2's mission wasn't for show, it was a lever of war. Even after decades, the Spirit still shocks adversaries. The Houthis didn't know they were feeding US analysts. The Spirit painted the battlefield with invisible ink. Supply depots, transmission hubs, fuel terminals marked. Then came the Hornets, screaming toward Yemen's coast, armed with JDAMs and harms, precision and fury combined. Growlers jammed radar, cloaking the strike package. Targets lit by the Spirit were about to vanish. Fuel tank clusters, tunnels, command shelters, all exposed. First strikes fell in silence, then fire consumed the port. In 30 seconds, a chain reaction lit Ras Isa aflame. Offshore Tomahawks joined the storm. One hit a warehouse, the other collapsed a tunnel. Total strike time, 6 minutes. 17 targets gone. Radios went silent mid-transmission, chaos in the dark. Radar sights powered down, blinded and burning. Infrared showed vehicles fleeing inland. Lights off, doors open. No retaliation, no coordination. Only silence. Pentagon logs came back clean, no collateral damage. But it wasn't destruction alone. It was a message. From Tehran to Moscow, eyes turned to Yemen's coast. By sunrise, smoke from Ras Isa was visible from space. Inside Houthi territory, everything went quiet. Local chatter dropped to near zero, command had vanished. Ground sensors picked up only scattered figures fleeing. No speeches, no retaliation, only smoke and silence. They underestimated how fast the US could strike. Years of untouchable Ras Isa erased overnight. A blind spot no longer, Ras Isa was redefined. For years, Ras Isa stood untouched even in Saudi strikes. But April 17 changed theory into target. Fuel logistics encrypted comms wiped in one night. Within 24 hours, oil markets rippled. Analysts scrambled, was this escalation or inevitability? Encrypted chatter revealed panic, rumors of cyber attacks. What they didn't realize, their framework had collapsed. Relays severed. Mobile units fried. Tempo gone. Washington issued no statement, only silence. Instead, satellites told the story: scorched earth. For Houthis, SAM systems were no longer safe. For backers abroad, the warning was sharper. Hide behind infrastructure and it becomes fair game. This wasn't revenge, it was doctrine. The conflict had entered a new phase, stealth now hunted. Until now, US posture had been defensive measured. Threats monitored, documented, rarely struck back. But Ras Isa flipped the script. Deploying a B-2 wasn't just about firepower, it was intent. Adversaries grew comfortable with the gray zone, launching drones from cities, bunkers beneath oil depots. They assumed the US wouldn't risk striking back. But with one mission, that assumption died. No longer just a port, it was redefined as a node of war. With that reclassification came a new doctrine. If it fuels the war machine, it's on the board. This wasn't escalation, it was clarification. Stealth bombers were no longer reserved, they were active. Authorized to engage not in hours but in minutes. The battlefield shifted not geography but psychology. Wars aren't just fought with bombs but with tempo. Control over who moves next. That was the real win. After April 17, the next move wasn't Houthis to make. April 17 wasn't just precise, it was decisive. What set it apart wasn't execution, it was the message. Until then, America shadowed threats, it didn't shatter them. That night, the rules were rewritten. Stealth was no longer a deterrent, it was the spear. Ports once safe became war chests, now valid targets. 6 minutes of silence could mean a strike inbound. Impact wasn't just tactical, it was psychological. The board wasn't just changed, it was reset. The spirit's silence was louder than any speech. The battlefield now belonged to the unseen. And from above, the spirit was already halfway home. After Ras Isa, the sky over Yemen was quiet but not peaceful. Inside Yemen, radio silence masked broken command. Encrypted channels filled with confusion and fear. Some whispered of cyber war, others of betrayal. They didn't see a strike, they saw their network collapse. Key relays, severed launchers gone before they could move. At Ras Isa, it wasn't just fuel that burned, it was tempo. The US didn't boast it, let satellites show the proof. For Houthis, Samfire was no longer safe, it was reckless. For backers abroad hiding in gray zones was no shield. April 17 wasn't escalation, it was revelation. Stealth wasn't waiting, it was hunting. Civilian shields no longer stopped the blade. For Washington, this wasn't escalation, it was clarity.
Commander.
And clarity in war is deadly. The impact didn't end with craters, it rewrote the board. This wasn't reaction, it was preemption. Calculated, relentless, silent. Every radar ping, every convoy now, a risk of annihilation. The legacy of April 17 was not the strike, it was the shift. A new doctrine where stealth hunts, not hides. Where ports that fuel war are no longer safe. Where 6 minutes of silence could mean destruction inbound. The strike wasn't revenge, it was policy. It was clarity delivered with steel. And for Houthis, one lesson remained: no second chances. The war you didn't see, the one that rewrote the rules. From above, silent, invisible, already halfway home. For Washington, the message was clear. You don't fire on a B-2 and walk away.